All right. Well, welcome to Simple Italian Cooking. Ciao, friends. My name is Liz, and I'm so glad you're here today. Got a great recipe for you. If you've ever wondered how to make an amazingly delicious stuffed eggplant that tastes really good, but that is actually really easy to make, I've got the perfect recipe for you. I'm going to step you through it in detail so you can feel free to follow along with me. Or if you want to just watch it and consume it, that's totally fine too. So one thing that's really great about this recipe is that it's super, super flexible with the ingredients. So today we're going to be using 2 eggplants. It's going to give us about 4 servings. Consider a half of an eggplant a serving. And I actually have these eggplants that were in our fridge, and we forgot about them. We forgot that we had bought them. So I'm hoping when I cut them open, they actually won't be a big mushy mess. I think they'll be okay. They're still firm, so that's good. But the first thing we're going to do is, actually the first thing I'm going to do is go over the ingredients. And I'm going to explain as we go through it some of the ways that you can really be flexible with this recipe. So I have 2 eggplants here that are, they're kind of small. They're not huge, so adjust accordingly. We're going to use a little bit of ground beef. I'm using about a half a pound. And if you don't have ground beef, I'm going to show you what else you can use to substitute that. I'm using some tomatoes. We've got garlic. We've got some breadcrumbs here. And we've got some cheese, okay? And I'm going to actually show you what to do if you don't have any breadcrumbs. And then we've got, obviously, some olive oil, extra virgin, of course, and we've got some black pepper. In terms of herbs is one of those areas where I'm going to tell you can be really, really flexible with. So I'm just going to show you 3 herbs that you can use. You don't have to use them all, but it's basil. I'm using fresh because I don't have any dried right now. I have some dried oregano. You can use fresh if you have that. And the same with the parsley. I'm using dried. The reason why I'm using dried is I'm just going to mix it all together. And I just think it's a good recipe for dried herbs. But if you want to use fresh, go for it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is deal with our eggplant. When you make a stuffed eggplant, here's a problem that a lot of people have, and that is when they stuff it, they bake it, they cut into it, it tastes great, they go to eat the skin, and it's a tough mess that's just not enjoyable to eat. So I'm going to show you the trick to get around that. So the first thing we're going to do is cut off the ends. Looking good. Cut it in half. Okay, nice. Now, if they don't have a lot of seeds, because it's a fairly young eggplant, don't worry about salting it or anything like that. Don't worry, it's not going to be bitter. You really only need to salt it when it's a more mature plant, has a lot of seeds and stuff. So, and I don't even think for this recipe it's all that necessary, period. We're going to scoop out the insides, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually bake the skins first, okay? And I've got the oven set to 375. It's only going to take about 10, 15 minutes to cook, which is great. Don't worry about if, oh man, that's 15 more minutes that I'm going to have to be in the kitchen. No, it's not, because while it's cooking the skin, we're going to get everything else cooked up and ready to go. So a little multitasking there, or strategic planning. So the way we're doing this, the way you want to cut the eggplant, scoop it, and I'm not a connoisseur when it comes to eggplant. I actually am usually not a huge eggplant fan, but there's certain recipes I really like, and this is one of them, is stuffed eggplant. So we're just going to cut, I'm going to score about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch from the skin. And then what I'm going to do is just real lightly, I'm not going to go all the way down because I don't want to pierce the skin. I'm really trying hard not to pierce it. Is you score it like this, okay? You just cut some lines in it with the knife, and then we're going to go the opposite way, and it's going to make little cubes, and it's really easy to pop. Okay, so I've got the little crosshairs in it, and I'm just going to use a spoon, and I'm just going to kind of scoop them out, and they pop out really, really easy. So what are we going to do with it? I'm just going to go ahead and start cooking it up. So I'm going to turn on my little induction burner here. I'm going to put it on a low-medium heat, and I'm going to heat up just a little bit of olive oil. So I have about 1/8 of a cup in here right now. And I'm going to do about half of that or so in the pan So we're going to use some at the end to drizzle on the top. So just go ahead and we want to scoop it out and put it right in there. And we're going to cook it down. We're just going to go ahead and cook that inside down. All right, we got our first one done. I think that's looking pretty good. And just go ahead and repeat the process for all the eggplant that you have. And what I'm doing is I am leaving a little bit here. I'm not cutting out the edge because I want it to be like a boat. So I don't want the stuff falling out at the end. So I just leave a little ledge there. Okay, so I'm proud of myself because I didn't break any of the skins and did a good job. So now what we're going to do is you're just going to get a baking dish. You can also use just a baking sheet, but I'm just going to go ahead and do a baking pan. Put the I'm going to do a baking pan. And I'm going to go ahead and just put the shells in the baking pan, and we're going to bake it for about 10-15 minutes, okay? And that's going to cook down the outside of the shell, the thickness of the shell, the skin, just enough so that then when we bake it later and take it out of the oven, when we're ready to eat it, it will be cooked enough. Okay, so I'm going to put the timer on for 10 minutes, and we'll see how we're doing there. You can also rub the outside with olive oil if you want. Some people do that. I don't bother. So we have here our eggplant and a little bit of olive oil, and what we want to do is we want to cook that down till it starts to brown. Okay, I had to get my wooden spoon. And I'm just using a regular saute pan. I'm not sure what the size is. It's about maybe 8 inches, 10 inch. Actually, it's probably about a 10 inch. And I just have it on medium low. And if you have any large chunks like I do right here, just go ahead and use your knife, cut it down. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit. I want to get this going here. And we're going to let this cook. Now, next what we're going to do is let this cook for about maybe 5 minutes or so. Then I'm going to add in the ground beef, and we're going to cook that up. So by the time that'll be about 10 minutes, so the shells will just be ready, and then we'll need to cool them down a little bit. Okay. Real quick note, you might be wondering why I'm not adding the garlic yet, like sauteing the garlic and then adding this in. That's because when I'm doing the garlic, if I were to do the garlic first, it would probably end up cooking too much because then I'm cooking it with everything else. If I was adding a sauce or liquid right after the garlic sauteed, that would be a little different. So I'm going to be adding the garlic a little bit later. And that's totally fine. So I feel so silly. I totally forgot because I had gone back and forth on this particular ingredient. If you want to add in some zucchini, now would be the time to do it. And that was something that I did mean to add in there. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to do that. So mine is organic, so I'm not worried about the skin. And I'm just going to chop it really quick. I'm not going to do too much. So I was going to do the zucchini, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And then my husband was asking about it because he was making eggs this morning, and a lot of times he likes to do zucchini and add zucchini into his eggs. So in my mind, I was like, just let him use it up. But then we had a lot of zucchini, so it was like, oh, well, maybe I will use it. Silly. As I slice it, and then I cut it down lengthwise like this. And then I cut it one more time going down the opposite way crosswise, and that gives it some nice cubes. That's when the zucchini is really thick. Okay. Now we all know that zucchini has a high water content, so that's gonna cook down pretty good. I gotta turn this down because my eggplant is right where I wanted it to be in the first place. But you know what? If you don't have zucchini, you don't have to use it. Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and push this off to the side because it takes up a lot of space, not the largest saucepan here. And I'm going to go ahead and add in the beef. Now, I'm using a ½ pound of ground beef. If you don't want to use beef, there are lots of alternatives you can do. One, you can just omit it altogether. You could do it sausage instead. If that's the case, if you were doing that, I would probably cook it before you do everything else to make sure, because sausage really takes a little longer to cook. And but another thing that you can do if you really want to make it healthy and you want to make it a vegetarian dish is add in some cooked lentils. I'd probably add in about a half a cup of cooked lentils. And the way that you do the lentils is simply take a saucepan, fill it up with some water, add the lentils, bring it to a boil, and simmer it, and bring it down to a simmer. Cover, let it simmer for about 20 minutes. Your lentils will be nice and soft. That's what you want. Then you just add them in. Okay, so while that's doing this, I'm going to go ahead and place a cover on it. So now what we're going to do while this is cooking, and we only have a few minutes left till our shells are just about done, what we want to do is make our breadcrumb and cheese mixture. So the breadcrumb and cheese mixture is really cool. It's going to be added on at the end, not in the middle. We're going to top it with the cheese and the breadcrumbs, because the breadcrumbs are going to give it a nice crispy texture. And if you want to add some of the cheese throughout, you can do that as well. But what happens if you don't have any breadcrumbs on hand? One, you can just omit them, okay? But you can do what I did and what I frequently do, because I often don't have breadcrumbs on hand, but I do keep, here we go, I keep like just old pieces of bread that maybe we didn't use fast enough, like artesian bread, rolls, stuff like that. I just keep them off to the side or in the freezer, whatever. And I put them through my NutriBullet here. So just like this. It's super, super easy. So just add in your stale bread. I'm just going to do a few here, and hopefully it won't be too loud. And what you can do is just grind it and blend it until you get the texture that you're looking for. So these are actually a little big, but I think they'll be fine. They're about the size of panko. But you can go real fine if you want the real fine. Just let it run a little bit longer. I just don't think I don't really care for this particular purpose. I'm happy either way. So this just went off, so let's take a look and see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and cook it for about another 5 minutes. Ooh, looking good. So beef is coming along real well. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in the herbs. I want to say something about the herbs. If you want to make it simple, you can just add the parsley, which I have right here. That alone will be enough. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in just a little tiny dash of oregano, and I'm also going to add in just some parsley. Now, some basil. I don't have any dried basil, so I'm just going to use some fresh basil that I have. But I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of parsley. And then the oregano, I have some of my own dehydrated oregano, and I know it's pretty potent, so I think it's going to be good. I don't always cook with all 3 types of herbs, but for this particular recipe, I really want a little bit more complexity to the flavor. Okay, and an easy way to do the basil, and I'm not using the stems, we want to go ahead and toss that, is I'm just going to take the leaves and I'm just going to roll them up in a bunch. It's really easy. Nice little tip. Because basil can be hard to cut, right, if you want to cut it into strips or chop it. Just roll up the leaves, just like this, like a cigar. And then what I do is I cut it down the middle, keeping them together. And then just go ahead and cut it like this. And this will give you, and then you can just easily chop it like that. And sprinkle it in. I think eggplant and basil go really well together, so I'm not afraid to use that. Eggplant and oregano go really well together. Eggplant and parsley go really well together. So for this dish, I think it's great. Oh, and you know what? We almost forgot the garlic. So real simple. All you want to do is just chop it real fine, and we're going to bake it for about 30 minutes. This is one of those dishes that, because of different factors involved, the type of oven you have, or how big your eggplant is, or how much you're stuffing it, you know, it might be 40 minutes. So that's why I'm going to at least do it for 30 minutes, and then we go ahead and check it. Man, that zucchini just cooked right down. Okay, I'm going to add a dash of black pepper. You don't have to do this on it. So I'm going to go ahead and just add just a little bit of cheese. Now, I'm using Romano cheese, okay? Now, if you have Parmesan, you can use that. If you can use mozzarella if you like mozzarella. I find that all I need is the Romano. If you want to really make it fancy, do a blend of all three. The thing that is important, though, when making good Italian recipes is that the quality of the actual ingredients are good. Doesn't mean you have to buy the most expensive, but what it does mean is if you have, for instance, cheese that you bought at the store and it's a generic kind of off-brand, it's probably not going to have that much flavor. It's just not going to, so it's not going to impart. And then you're going to be like, Liz, this really wasn't very tasty. Well, duh, you didn't use good ingredients. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, I'm going to add some breadcrumbs into the cheese mixture. And I'm just not really doing too much because I'm eyeballing this. So I may need to grab more. But I like to go ahead and mix it up. Oh, I love it when there's these like big chunks of cheese in here because I grind my own cheese. It's so good. Now what I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, but I really want to make sure that there's a good flavor in the eggplant itself. So I'm going to just brush some of this olive oil. I'm just using one of these silicone brush tops. I like don't even use the handle part. I just grab the top. I don't know if that's being lazy or if that's just being really smart. So now all we do is grab a big spoon and we're going, oops, that's hot. We're going to go ahead and fill these up. So far, so good, right? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our tomatoes, and I just have 2 of them here. 2 small potatoes. I mean, wait, did I say potatoes or tomatoes? I don't know. Take 2 medium-sized tomatoes. You can use grape tomatoes, you can use cherry tomatoes, but the best would be something like this, or aroma tomato would be really good, because what we're going to do, just cut out the inside here and slice them. Okay, so I have some good ones here. It's looking pretty. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this right on top. It will make a mess, so don't worry about making sure that it all stays exactly on the eggplant, because it's just not going to happen anyway. So don't stress about it. One thing that's nice about using the Romano cheese is that it's not going to melt into a gooey mess. Now, if you really like that cheesy, gooey, stringy stuff, then that's where you'd really want to get that mozzarella, but you wouldn't want to put the mozzarella on yet because it'll just burn, because it burns really fast. But Romano, you're not going to get that. And then we're going to drizzle the olive oil on top, or you can brush it. But I think the brushing, it would be a little more difficult. So I'm just going to drizzle. If you have a spray, you could use that, but I'm just going to drizzle it. This is one of those things I really wouldn't be shy with the olive oil, because that's really going to help the breadcrumbs crisp up, and it gives you that flavor on top that's going to go down into all the food. All right, so let's go ahead and pop it in the oven. And you might be wondering, why bother cooking it? Because, like, didn't I just cook everything? Yes. But what we didn't do is we're not letting it all cook and really blend with all the flavors. Sure, we did it over the stove here. That's fine. But I really wanted to get into that eggplant. That baking process is going to allow that to happen. All right, so I took it out. I checked it at 30 minutes. It looked really, really good. But I wanted the top to crisp up just enough. But I could tell everything else was ready. So what I did was I broiled it for about 2 minutes. So if you want that crispy look and texture, then and you haven't gotten it by the baking, just try broiling it, but keep an eye on it constantly because it will burn quickly. All right, so let's go ahead and this looks so delicious. I'm so ecstatic to try this. Mmm, mmm. That's so good, especially with the beef. Wow, that is absolutely delicious. And the stem, that bite was just the stem. Smells like butter. Delicious. Well, now you know how to make stuffed eggplant Italian style. That is absolutely easy, super delicious. Took us what, about 20 minutes to put everything together and prep the shells, and then 30 minutes in the oven. So, in about an hour, if not less. I mean, and while it's baking, you can get your sides done and cook up some, green beans on the side or a salad. Or please remember that if you like food like this, if you like Italian recipes, easy recipes, simple recipes, please subscribe, give us a like. Really, really appreciate it. Helps us out. And let me know in the comments if you try this recipe. It is absolutely delicious. And if you have your own tips for the way you make it or change it, let me know. I love to hear how people take my recipes and just run with it on their own. So, again, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Everybody out there, you're just wonderful. Thank you so much, and definitely try this recipe. Molto grazie. Ciao.